They said Earth would be safe. When the first alien contact came, humanity had finally stepped into the interstellar age. It was clumsy at first, trading old Earth tech for scraps of alien knowledge. But we managed. We joined the Galactic Concord, signed treaties, smiled in the presence of beings older than our entire civilization. We brought peace offerings. We obeyed every rule. But when the invasion came, not a single one of those so-called allies lifted a finger. The Varkeen didn't come to trade. They came to take. Massive black ships, shaped like serpents and powered by gravity engines, tore through our satellites and military defenses like paper. Within days, most of the major cities were gone. London, Tokyo, New York, Johannesburg. Ashes. At first, Earth's leaders begged for help. The Council of Nine Worlds responded with diplomatic silence. The Lokari Confederacy issued a statement of deep concern. The Urel simply turned their bioships and fled the Sol system altogether. And humanity? We were left bleeding, broken, betrayed. I was 17 when the Varkeen glassed my hometown in Arizona. My mom didn't make it. My dad was already gone. Military? Probably one of the first to die in orbit. They always say heroes die first. I survived by hiding in a grocery store freezer, chewing through frozen peas while the air turned to poison outside. I remember watching the news on a dying phone screen, my breath fogging up the plastic door. Every human face on the screen was the same. Terrified, desperate, enraged. We weren't just being wiped out, we were being humiliated, abandoned. But it wasn't the end, because that's when they came. Not the ones from the Council, not the cowards who signed our treaties and drank our wine. The others, the apex predators, the galaxy's nightmares. The first to arrive were the Jurak, giant insect-like warlords with mandibles that could split titanium. They didn't bother with diplomacy. They didn't even ask for permission. They just landed and started hunting the Varkeen like sport. I saw one Jurak warrior tear through a Varkeen dropship with its bare claws, laughing in a deep, chittering growl. Next came the Zartek, 7-foot-tall reptilian assassins, their blood literally toxic, their eyes glowing like dying suns. The Varkeen tried to reason with them. They answered with fire. Whole battalions of Varkeen vanished overnight in plasma storms and silent strikes. We didn't understand why they came. We didn't ask. We were too busy surviving. I ended up in one of the resistance cells, one of the 1,000 little groups scattered across the planet, fighting with whatever we had left. Old tanks, hunting rifles, sharpened metal. We scavenged what we could from fallen ships, learned to blend in the ruins. I met Samira there, and Nolan, and that weird old man we called Fixer, who could make bombs out of scrap microwave parts and prayer. We fought hard, but even with everything, we were losing, until the predators started talking to us. Not in our language. At first it was all gestures and shared kills and crude marks drawn into the dirt. But they were trying. They weren't here just to hunt. They were here because the Varkeen had crossed some kind of line. See, in the galactic food chain, there's an unspoken rule. You don't invade a developing predator species. You don't wipe out potential rivals. It's not honor. It's not kindness. It's fear. And humans? We were the big unknown, the wild card. The species no one wanted to admit scared them. The predators didn't come to help us. They came to see what we'd become when cornered. And what they found was something terrifying. They started calling us the Fire Children. It wasn't a name we gave ourselves. It came from the Jurak war priests, those hulking insectoid beasts with armor like obsidian and scars that told stories of 10,000 battles. One of them looked right at me, antenna twitching in the smoky air, and tapped my chest with a blood-stained claw. Fire. Inside. It chittered in broken speech. You burn. You do not fall. I didn't understand what he meant, not at first. But later, when I saw Samira charge a Varkeen plasma turret with only a crowbar in hand and no fear in her eyes, I began to get it. We weren't winning, God no, but we weren't breaking either. The more we lost, the more furious we became. The more they burned our homes, the more we screamed back with violence. Our resistance became something savage, primitive, beautiful. There was no strategy, no grand plan, just fire, chaos, and a refusal to die quietly. That's what the predators saw, and that's why they stayed. The Zartek trained us in silence, never speaking a word. They'd grab one of us, me, Nolan, some wide-eyed teenager with a stolen Varkeen sidearm, and drag us into the ruins. Show us how to move unseen, how to breathe in rhythm with shadows. They taught us how to kill with a flick of the wrist, how to make every heartbeat count in a fight. I watched one Zartek slit a Varkeen commander's throat with a knife made from bone and venom, then nod at me like I'd passed a test I didn't know I was taking. The Jurak were louder. They fought alongside us in berserker waves, their battle cries so loud they cracked concrete. They loved our rage, they encouraged it. When one of them fell, they expected us to take its weapons and keep fighting. "Honor is not in the death," one of them growled at me once, dragging my bleeding body off a burning battlefield. "It is in what you do after." But it wasn't just the predators who changed. We were changing too. The humans who survived the first wave of destruction weren't the same as the ones before. We weren't just engineers, teachers, students, soldiers. We were scavengers, killers, survivors. Something new was being born in the ashes of Earth. And the Varkeen? They started to notice. Their attacks became desperate, less precise, sloppier. They started bombing entire zones with corrosive mist, hoping to kill us and the predators both. Didn't work. All it did was make us angrier. I remember the night Samira came back with half her squad gone. Her left eye was scorched shut, her hands shaking as she held Nolan's dog tags in her fist. "No one's coming," she said, her voice hollow. "The Council's watching us die and taking notes, recording data. Bastards want to see how long the humans last before we're extinct." Fixer lit a fire that night, even though the smoke risked giving away our position. Said he didn't care. Said if he was going to die, he wanted the bastards to see it coming. We sat in that firelight, me, Samira, Fixer, and a wounded Zartek scout, and shared silence like a ritual. I looked up at the stars, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel small beneath them. They abandoned us, but the monsters didn't. And in becoming their students, we were learning what no treaty, no alliance, no peaceful diplomacy could have taught us. How to win a war no one thought we could survive. The predators had no mercy to teach us, only purpose. By the third month of full-scale war, the planet was a graveyard of cities and bones. Forests were scorched down to charred stumps. Oceans turned black in places where Varkeen waste had spilled. But under all that death, something brutal and alive kept crawling forward. We called it the Ember Line. It wasn't an army in the traditional sense. No flags, no uniforms, just humans. Doctors turned saboteurs, farmers turned snipers, teenagers who learned to wire trip mines better than they could tie their shoes. And behind them, or sometimes beside them, the apex predators of the galaxy. We'd stopped calling them aliens. They were kin now. Different bones, same fire. The Ember Line moved through the ruins like a storm. No formal leaders, no waiting for orders. When a Varkeen gunship fell out of the sky near the old Denver crater, we didn't celebrate. We scavenged it in pieces before the smoke cleared. That was our way now. Mourn later, fight now. I became a scout. The Zartek had carved a mark into my shoulder, said it meant silent death in their kill language. I never knew if they were complimenting me or warning others. Maybe both. My squad was small. Samira was our anchor. Scarred, angry, brilliant. Fixer stayed behind in the burrows, building death machines from scrap and spit. We picked up others along the way. Rio, the ex-cop with a shattered leg and a heart like steel. Dana, who used to be a schoolteacher and now carried twin blades she'd taken off a dead Varkeen lieutenant. Every one of us carried loss, but none of us carried surrender. One night, under the blue glow of a fractured moon, we hit our first real target. A Varkeen relay station pulsing like a black heart in the ruins of Las Vegas. The predators had mapped it out, but it was up to us to destroy it. They didn't come with us. They want to see if we can do it alone, Samira whispered as we watched the blinking lights from the ridge. They want to see if we've become what they think we are. What's that? Rio asked, already loading his coil gun. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. We moved in like shadows. Varkeen patrols were everywhere, 7-foot monsters in gleaming armor, their weapons humming with hate. But we were quieter, smarter, meaner. I knifed one through the throat and felt nothing. Dana slit another open from groin to jaw, her mouth a thin line. Samira planted the charges with steady hands, whispering to the explosives like they were old friends. We waited in silence, hearts pounding, the smell of alien blood thick around us. Then, boom! The whole station went up in a column of fire, turning the night into a violent sunrise. Varkeen screamed. Some of them burned. Others ran. And us? We stood in the smoke, waiting for the retaliation that never came. Because when the predators showed up, they didn't look disappointed. They looked proud. A Jurak general approached us after that, one of the oldest we'd seen, half his carapace melted and one arm replaced by a blade. He didn't speak in riddles like the rest. He just looked at Samira and said in deep, booming English, "You're not prey anymore." That stuck with us, because that was the real war, not just survival, not just revenge, but transformation. The galaxy had written Earth off as a victim. The Council thought we'd die off quietly, a footnote in their history logs. But they were wrong. The predators didn't come to save us. They came to witness a new predator being born. Humanity had finally stopped asking for help. Now we were learning how to hunt. The sky never got blue again after Vegas. Something in the Varkeen tech poisoned the atmosphere above the strike zone, turned the clouds yellow, the rain acidic. But we didn't care. We wore masks or we didn't breathe. Simple. By then, survival wasn't just instinct. It was vengeance carved into our bones. We heard whispers through the predator ranks, rumors that reached even the cold corners of the Ember Line. The Council was watching us closer now. Still no help, but more drones, more silent probes floating just beyond our reach. Observers, measuring how long we'd last. Samira laughed when she heard. "They're afraid we're going to win," she said, lighting her last cigarette on a piece of hot scrap. "That's the problem. They thought we'd scream, beg, burn out, but we're still here." I didn't say anything, just stared out at the wreck of Earth, where human corpses and Varkeen alike lay rotting under the rusted remains of buildings. I didn't feel anything anymore when I saw the dead. But I did when I saw the living. A few days after the relay station strike, we picked up a signal, weak, scattered, bouncing off old satellite bones. Fixer pieced it together, eyebrows raised. "Human," he muttered. "They're broadcasting coordinates, survivors." We found them in an abandoned mining facility outside what used to be New Delhi. A few dozen at most, children, elders, wounded, clinging to life in the tunnels like shadows of our past. They looked at us like we were ghosts. Or monsters. I didn't blame them. We were covered in blood, most of it not ours, and armed to the teeth with scavenged weapons, alien armor half melded to our own. Samira knelt in front of a young girl, maybe 7 years old, eyes too hollow for her age. "You're safe now," she whispered. But the girl only nodded slowly, like she didn't believe in safety anymore. We stayed the night, shared food, medicine, stories. One old woman wept when Rio gave her an extra ration pack. Said her son had died in the first wave of glassings. She asked him, "Are we losing?" He looked at her for a long time. "No," he said. "We're changing." The predators arrived again that night. Not many, just a pair of Jurak warriors and a Tsar tech scout. They didn't speak, didn't ask for anything. They just stood at the edges of the firelight, watching the children, watching us. "They see it too," Dana whispered. "They're watching us evolve." It hit me then, what this war was doing to us. Not just killing or breaking us, forging us, hammering us into something new. We weren't human the way the Council remembered anymore. We weren't begging diplomats or frightened colonists. We were survivors, weapons, wolves, and that terrified them. The next day the Varkeen retaliated for Vegas. Hard. They dropped a plague bomb on a survivor hub near Mexico City. Killed everything. Plant, animal, human. Samira lost her sister there. She didn't cry. She didn't speak for 2 days. When she did, her voice was ice. We hit back. Harder. Fixer had just finished something new. Something big. A ship. Well, a Frankenstein of a ship. Half Varkeen transport, half Jurak bone ship. Wired together with Earth steel and Predator tech. We called it the Spine. Ugly, fast, barely held together with code and fire. That ship wasn't for escape. It was for war. Because Earth wasn't enough anymore. We had learned everything we could on this broken planet. And now? It was time to take the fight to the stars. The Spine shouldn't have flown. Every law of physics, engineering, and divine mercy said it should have collapsed on the launch pad. But laws didn't matter anymore, not to us. Fixer had pulled off the impossible, welding Predator and human tech with little more than intuition and spite. He smiled when the engines roared to life, eyes shining like he was 20 again instead of 60-something with half a lung. "She's ugly," he said, patting the hull, "but she bites. We didn't launch quietly. No, we made noise, lit up the sky like a second sun, sent a signal to every eye in orbit. Earth's not done. Humanity's not finished. We're coming." And they heard. The Varkeen scrambled ships within minutes. Big ones, clean. The kind that drifted through space like floating tombs and carried enough firepower to burn a moon. They came in fast, expecting to swat us like flies. But they didn't expect the Spine. She moved like a beast unchained, erratic, vicious, unpredictable. She wasn't built for elegance. She was built for rage. Rio manned the cannons. Samira piloted, hands steady, voice cold. I ran strike ops from the side deck, calling targets, watching through fractured screens as our enemies realized just how wrong they'd been about Earth's last breath. We tore into the Varkeen with everything we had. Plasma ripped through their armor. Missile pods hacked from Jurak designs left glowing holes in their sleek ships. And when they finally got one hit on us, just one, the damage was already done. We didn't destroy their fleet, but we broke it. Bad enough that they limped away. Bad enough that they ran. We landed in orbit around Foros 9, one of the Varkeen's supply colonies, a minor outpost floating above a gas giant, never meant for combat. They thought we were bluffing. We weren't. Samira stood at the hatch before we breached atmosphere, eyes locked on the swirling planet below. "We make an example," she said, "so the rest of them know there's a price for touching Earth." We hit the colony with 3 squads, humans and predators together. Zartek moved like ghosts through their corridors, slitting throats in the dark. Jurak stomped through barricades, laughing as blood sprayed across their armor. And us? We brought the fire. Dana used a flamethrower made from 2 broken coolant lines and a canister of something Fixer refused to name. I dropped charges into their command spires. Samira walked into their communications tower with nothing but a pulse rifle and left it in ashes. The humans on Foros 9, because yes, there were humans there, sold off generations ago into service under the Varkeen, watched us with disbelief. They'd thought Earth was gone, thought the species had died whimpering. One of them, a boy not much older than I'd been during the first invasion, grabbed my arm in the ruins. "You're from Earth?" he asked, voice trembling. "You survived?" I nodded, and he started crying. That hit me harder than any wound. We didn't just come to fight. We came to remind them. We still exist. By the time we left Foros 9, the Varkeen had abandoned it, burned their own records, fled to deeper systems. But it wasn't just about the win. It was about what came after. Because the moment we returned to orbit, we got a message. Encrypted. Council signature. "Cease hostilities." It read, "We're ready to negotiate terms." Samira laughed so hard she nearly collapsed. "Now they want peace?" she hissed. "Now when we've tasted blood and the predators walk beside us like kin?" I looked at her, at the crew, at the spine pulsing with heat and anger beneath our feet. "No," I said, "we're not negotiating. Not yet." Because this wasn't revenge anymore. It was a reckoning. We didn't respond to the council. Not a word, not a flicker of acknowledgement. Let them sweat in their ivory towers, watching our every move through sanitized screens while they clutched their treaties and whispered about unforeseen developments. We weren't some colony begging for rescue anymore. We were the storm they tried to ignore. And now it was circling. After Foros 9, more humans started showing up. Not soldiers, survivors, workers, slaves, even children born on alien soil who barely spoke Earth languages. They came with wide eyes and broken spirits, afraid to believe what they were seeing. "You're from Earth?" they'd ask. "We are Earth," Dana would say. The predators didn't slow down. If anything, they ramped up. Whatever taboo the Varkeen had broken by attacking a developing predator species, us, it was deeper than we realized. The Jurak began sharing battle rituals, marking human fighters with blood crests. The Zartek opened silent libraries buried in asteroid tombs, showing us how to track prey across light years. We weren't allies, we were heirs. And something about that terrified the galaxy more than anything else. Back on the spine, we found a data cache buried in the wreckage from Foros 9, Varkeen war logs. At first, just standard garbage, troop numbers, kill counts, projections. But buried deeper were files marked Apex Anomaly, Human Origin. Turns out they'd been watching us for longer than we thought. Even before first contact, the Varkeen had flagged humanity as strategically volatile. Our species evolved too fast, learned too aggressively. Where most civilizations took millennia to master spaceflight, we did it in decades. Where others feared extinction, we grew meaner, tougher, more unpredictable under pressure. The final line in one report burned into my memory. Humans do not break. They adapt violently. I showed Samira. She stared at it in silence, then whispered, "They knew." That's why they hit first. They were scared of what we'd become. We made a decision that night. No more reaction. No more counterstrikes. We were taking the war to them. The Jurak gave us coordinates. A Varkeen breeding fortress deep in uncharted space. Protected. Remote. Never touched by war. They didn't think anyone could find it. We proved them wrong. It took weeks to get there. The spine held barely. Fixer worked non-stop to keep her patched together with melted wires and predator components we barely understood. Samira never left the cockpit, staring at the stars like they owed her blood. When we arrived, the fortress loomed like a floating city of teeth, towers pulsing with life, ships drifting like sleeping dragons around it. "This is it," Samira said. "This is where they breed, where they feed, where they think they're safe." We didn't ask for votes. There were no second thoughts. No one flinched. We went in. They never expected us. We came in under blackout, no warnings, no mercy. The Zartek struck first, disabling their comms before a single alarm could ring. The Jurak rammed through the main gate like living siege engines, and we, humans born of fire and betrayal, we flooded their halls with fury. I killed a Varkeen commander with my bare hands. Samira set their hatcheries on fire, eyes burning with something unholy. Dana marked the walls with earth symbols in Varkeen blood. By the end, the fortress was silent. Smoke, ash, echoes of what had been invincible. We didn't stay. We left a message behind, a beacon broadcasting in every known language aimed directly at the council. You watched us burn, now watch us rise. That message would travel fast, but we moved faster. They called us Ghost Fire. That's what the council labeled us in their encrypted communiques. Humans and their predator allies, who struck like phantoms, left nothing but smoldering wreckage in their wake. They still couldn't say our names out loud, couldn't admit that the species they abandoned had become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. We heard their whispers through stolen transmissions. Unstable. Rogue element. Threat to galactic equilibrium. They wanted to believe we were just a glitch, a freak resistance that would fade once the adrenaline wore off. But every fortress we shattered, every fleet we crippled, every enslaved human we freed, that was a reminder. We weren't going away. We were evolving. The predators didn't slow down, they escalated. Some even started deferring to our command, not because they feared us, but because they respected us. Not many humans understood what that meant. The Jurak don't follow orders. The Zartek don't kneel. But I saw it with my own eyes. An insectoid general standing behind Samira like a personal guard, his claws twitching in anticipation as she outlined the next target. You are flame-born, he rasped. We honor fire. We became more than soldiers. We became symbols. And symbols have power. New humans joined us daily, pirates, smugglers, scavengers who had never cared about Earth before. They came for revenge, for family, for meaning. One group brought a relic, an Earth flag, burned around the edges, still folded like someone had once believed in what it stood for. Samira took it without a word and tied it to the main mast of the spine. Let it fly over every battle. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore. We were fighting because of it. That was different. That was dangerous. We targeted a core Varkeen world next, Azagul Prime. Not just a military hub, a cultural jewel. Their version of our Vatican, Washington, and Louvre all rolled into one. We didn't even plan to destroy it. We planned to shame it. The infiltration was surgical. The predators cleared the perimeter. We dropped in with half a dozen squads, wearing repurposed armor, moving like wraiths. We walked through their sacred halls, through their museums of conquest, their temples of superiority. We broadcast live. We showed every race, every council world, what the Varkeen really were: slavers, executioners, liars. Fixer tapped into their mainframe and played clips of the bombings of Earth's cities on loop across their monuments. We shattered statues, hacked their symbols into something ours, and lit fires in places they thought untouchable. Before we left, Samira carved a single word into their grand assembly wall. Human. We didn't fire a shot, but we left that world screaming. The council held an emergency session within hours. They sent messengers, pleas, offers of reintegration, amnesty, peace talks. Earth can rejoin the fold, they said. Let's return to order. Samira spat on the deck when she read it. There is no fold, she growled. Not anymore. Because what they never understood, what they still couldn't grasp, was that this wasn't about diplomacy. It was about survival. They watched us die. Now they'd watch us lead. And behind us? A growing army. Not just humans, not just predators, but others. The oppressed, the overlooked, the ones left behind when the councils of the galaxy signed their treaties and turned blind eyes. We were building something, not an empire, a reckoning, one world at a time. It began not with an explosion, but with silence, the kind of silence that spreads across stars when power shifts, not from bureaucracy or elections, but from fear. The Council didn't issue another message after Azagul Prime. No more invitations, no more warnings. They pulled their diplomats back into their marble towers, their fleets into defensive positions, and they waited. Because they knew what was coming. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were the storm on the horizon. Word spread fast. The slums of forgotten colonies whispered about the humans who'd become the galaxy's avengers. In pirate ports and mining belts, people started painting red streaks down their faces, fire children war paint. Some called it defiance, others called it hope. But it was more than that. It was proof. Proof that being abandoned didn't mean being defeated. Proof that being hunted could teach you to hunt back. We took our final vote aboard the Spine, a war council, not of generals, but of survivors, humans, Jurak, Zar Tech. Others, species I couldn't name, with wounds we didn't ask about. Everyone had a reason to hate the council, and everyone had a reason to follow us. Fixer stood beside the map, old and broken, hands trembling from nerve damage. We hit the core, he said simply. The core, Council homeworld, Galaxis Prime, the heart of the so-called civilized galaxy. Not to destroy it, Samira added, but to expose it. We weren't bringing terror, we were bringing truth, their treaties, their peace accords, their smiles on camera, all lies. We were going to show the galaxy what power really meant when it stood on the bones of the forgotten. The fleet that followed us was unlike anything the Council had ever imagined. Not coordinated, not clean, just hungry, angry, and fast. Predator vessels, human-built wreckers, refugee ships strapped with guns and hope. We didn't fly in formation, we flew in fury. When we arrived at Galaxis Prime, they were waiting. Dozens of warships, shields flaring, diplomats broadcasting pleas for peace. We recognize Earth's pain, they said. We regret past inaction. Too late. Because by the time the first warning shot fired, we'd already landed. I hit the ground running, boots crunching on marble streets. Protesters stared from behind barricades, alien civilians who'd never seen a human in their lives, now watching us walk through their golden city with fire in our veins. We didn't touch them. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about message. Samira stood in the center of the great council hall, rifle slung across her back, voice ringing out to every camera, every translator, every terrified bureaucrat hiding behind velvet robes. "You left us to die," she said. "You watched us burn and called it necessary. You saw monsters coming and thought you could stay neutral." She pointed to us, to the warriors behind her, to the predators once feared by all. "These are the monsters, and they stood by us when you didn't." Silence. Then the Jurak leader stepped forward, cracked his armored chest plate open, and dropped the blood seal of his people onto their floor. "We follow the fire now," he growled. Others did the same. Zar Tech, Skarn nomads, the Lizari. Even humans born in alien chains who'd never seen Earth but bled for its memory. The Council collapsed not from fire, but from truth. Their fleets stood down, their laws unraveled, their flags lowered. Because for the first time in history, someone told the truth in their halls. And that truth was human. We didn't take their world. We didn't need it. We left them to sort through their shame and walked out without a shot fired. The Spine lifted off with a sky full of followers behind it. Not an empire. A movement. Earth had burned. But in the ashes we'd become something they never planned for. We were not the victims anymore. We were the apex, and now the galaxy would never forget it.